Okay, so we're going to have Dave Binkley, who's the director of instructional technology from Strongville City Schools, share with us. Hopefully he'll stay on longer than just half an hour so we can ask him questions. All
Thank
right,
you.
Dave, so nice to have you. I don't know much about your school, so can you also give us a little bit of a background? And then do you want me to hand you presenter status too, Dave?
Yeah, if you can hand me that over, I can actually, I have a little slide with the profile on it.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. Oh, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now you have the control. Yeah, we see your screen with a fabulous eagle on there.
All right, so let me move screens then. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great.
All
All right,
right,
I'm going to put myself on mute and watch for questions for you.
no problem. Thank you. So a little bit about ourselves. Strongsville City Schools, we're located in Northeast Ohio. We're about 20 to 30 minutes southwest of Cleveland. Our school ourselves, we're a large school, not as large as Brian's school, Pickerington, earlier today. We have one high school, one middle school, 5 community elementary schools, and 1 preschool. If you count all of our students, we're just about 5,500 students. Our teaching faculty is about 350. That includes our intervention specialist. And we have over 800 district staff when you count all of our aides, monitors. And tech-wise, we have been one-to-one in our high school for probably about 4 or 5 years. But we now became one-to-one throughout our district last fall. It was very useful last spring. But that gives us kind of an idea of where we're located and kind of where we're at right now with our student population. So kind of talk about what we did is we had to start, or actually we didn't have to, we chose to start remote this school year. We were a county in Ohio. There's a color code that, like Brian talked about earlier, we were red. Therefore, it was highly suggested that we start remote, and we did. So we took our remote learning experience from the spring and turned it into what we called Remote Learning 2.0. But our district is really big on SEL and UDL, so we wanted to make sure that our new remote learning focused on the social emotional learning aspects of our students, along with a hint of UDL at our secondary grades. So before I was the tech director, this is just my second year in this position, I was a science teacher. So for over a decade, I taught about failing, first attempt in learning, and always trying to move forward from everything there. So we really used our remote learning experience as a time to learn. We really came up with 3 things that we needed to connect with. So after surveying our teachers, our students, and our community members, the things that we thought about that we really have to work on for Remote Learning 2.0 really started with the lack of connection. You know, our students are in the buildings every day, they're working with their teachers, they work really hard to create that experience or that connection with the students. When we went remote in March, it was all gone. You know, we replaced, daily exposure to like worksheets, small quick videos, workbooks. It kind of lost what made us us. So we had little to no interaction with our students. Our attendance policy was really based off completion of the task that the teachers were giving our students. And most of our communications came through via email or any of the different LMSs that we were currently allowing at the time. Our next biggest issue was our lack of rigor. There are expectations for us with our teachers, our students, and our community. When we went to remote learning, we really kind of switched gears into that survival mode, and we were more task oriented. We unfortunately kind of moved away from some standards-based assignments that we traditionally do in our classrooms. With the quick turnover and the amount of PD needed to make that successful, we did have a need to address our remediation and enrichment for our students. And it really created a pass-fail mentality. We ended up not doing grades for our last quarter, and It was just, do you reach a satisfactory mark of turning in assignments or not? And that's not who we are as a district. You know, there is that expected rigor, the expectations of showing mastery. And then our last issue that we talked about was ownership. You know, we were experiencing one day at a time, both not only with our teachers, but our students as well. We had no student choice. We had our middle school and high school teachers put up their assignments. Kids had to do them. They couldn't really veer off of what was provided. And our elementary kids were giving a couple choices, but they were kind of limited into the type of assignment. It was either you can do assignment A or assignment B, but it wasn't any varying levels of difficulty. And we struggled at that time with meeting some of the accommodations of our students. We had no feedback. I shouldn't say we had no feedback. We had some feedback from some of our teachers, but not every teacher was providing adequate feedback. And then most of our activities were going back, you know, for us going back to DOK level 1 activities. So it really wasn't building that rigor that we keep talking about. So how did we address these failures? First thing we did was that we created a unified LMS. So we were using, we had some teachers using the free version of Schoology. We are a power school district, so we had some teachers using the Unified Classroom Learning or Haiku LMS they had. We had some teachers use Google Classroom. So what we ended up doing was just saying, you know, for the sake of ease and the buy-in that we had, and that we are also a Google reference district, that we just went Google Classroom pre-K through 12. That helped solidify the direction of where our students and teachers would go. So we also did remote learning evaluations for all of our IEP and 504 students. So this actually helped reach one of the biggest issues we had was reaching our students where they were, especially those on IEPs or 504. So we created a rubric, or I should say our special ed and student services department created a rubric for remote learning, and then they went through and met with all of our parents of students who were on a plan, and then decided on where they fell on the rubric, where there virtual accommodations we can give, or did they have to be in-person accommodations that we would have to provide them to come into for the fall. Because while we did have the choice to start remote, we were able to bring in some small groups of students at times, or single students in some classrooms, and work with them as needed. We went through when we bought the tech to have every teaching member of our staff to have a webcam, because this was based off of the premise of how we were going to communicate with our students, a little bit through live streaming, and a little bit through recording. So we all needed to have that tech. Within both our secondary and primary schedules, we built in some SEL time, some social emotional learning check-ins. Some, like for our primary, had multiple check-ins throughout the day. Our middle school and high school had kind of like a homeroom or first period check-in. And then we had asked teachers to kind of start class with a little bit of an SEL check-in as well. And we also created a content checks within those schedules as well, kind of like more of a wrap up. Instead of just starting the class, doing the activities, and letting the kids explore on their own, we made sure that we asked our teachers to bring the kids back towards the end of their scheduled time frame online, just to get some final questions or to wrap up of those classes. We did build in time for additional support as needed or desired. There's always an instructional support time built into all of our schedules for our remote learning. And then we even included Fridays, which were our asynchronous days, that there was additional office hours in morning and afternoon for our teachers to reach out to students. And then previously, attendance was done by just completing activities. Now attendance was taken during these check-ins. through class activities, through some of the programs we were utilizing, and also when content was mastered through some of the bigger projects or activities that kids were assigned. Our lack of rigor. So we addressed this, and I think there's about another 6 little bullets here for us, but we did create a time to allow for small group and differentiated instruction. This was really big, especially at our primary levels, to utilize this time to really make our kids, keep pushing them to that next level and to kind of really meet them where they were from, what's, I guess, been coined the COVID slide. We utilize our course maps and our PLCs or TBTs to determine our power standards through our course maps, so that those would be the items that we really would focus on in our remote learning. We purchased some programs to kind of assist us in this learning environment, and really the focus was, if we were going to purchase a program, it would have to provide us an opportunity to be successful in all of our learning environments. So our learning environments included the fully remote. Being hybrid, for us, that meant we have a green and a white schedule. Green students would come in Monday and Wednesdays. White students would come in Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Friday would be an asynchronous learning day for all. But we use things like ClassLink, which was presented on earlier, to help ease our students' use of getting to the software. Previously, depending on what building you were in, you had to go to a different website or a different teacher website or Google Classroom or your LMS. And it became very complicated for our students and our parents to get to the programs that we were asking them to. Kami really allowed us to take digital worksheets to the next level by providing feedback on them and utilizing those to actually write on PDFs. That was one of our biggest issues, where teachers were creating PDF worksheets online, but then our kids couldn't utilize them. And then they couldn't print them because we have printing blocked on our Chromebooks. So there's a lot of things that we had to do. Our interactive lessons with Pear Deck, Ed Puzzle, using Screencastify to record our lessons, either pre-record or record them as they were going out for remote learning. And we actually wanted to address our typing skills for especially our primary students, where we don't have your traditional computer classes in our primary schools. So we looked at Typing Agent as a way to help increase their technical skills on the keyboards throughout remote learning and as they come back to the classrooms. So we did a lot of PD on actionable and formative feedback. This was something that we really want to address internally from our staff comments. And it's been very helpful, as it has helped us create more PD environments or more conversations that our staff are really looking to their peer models. And they're kind of taking a lead too in helping discuss what is, good feedback, what is actionable feedback, what feedback can actually help our students. We have our profile of a graduate is actually a profile of our students, and that's our pre-K through 12 students, called the Model Mustang. So we looked at our Model Mustang competencies to reinforce activity playlists for our secondary students, to allow them to differentiate on how they're going to show mastery, which would allow that UDL instruction, which we've been focusing a lot on the last couple of years in our secondary level. And we utilize our PLCs to create mastery-based assessments. So while we did a lot of things during the week as check-ins, our introductions, when we had our asynchronous time, they were more mastery-based assignments or assessments. Instead of going by letter grade, it was, where are you on this rubric? And if you're not at the desired mastery level, what feedback can our teachers provide to help you get there? And that's been a continual thing that we've been growing on, even as we've started to return to the classrooms, about a month ago. So the lack of ownership, we built in daily and weekly PD time, PLC planning time, and communication time with our students and parents for our teachers. Our middle school and high school had it every day, and our um, primary teachers also had some throughout their day. But on Friday was really the day that we really utilized for our PD, our grade level meetings, and communicating with parents were those asynchronous days. So we also went through and we really try to utilize anchor docs to outline each segment. So that way, no matter what student was going to what class, the beginning looked pretty familiar. So teachers would have their timelines or their schedules out on their anchor docs, and they shared that out in their Google Classroom. So that way students knew what to expect as we went um, through the period or the day. And it also allowed them to have kind of like a checklist, so that way when it came to an assignment, were they, good to go or not. So we utilized some more choice boards and playlists for student ownership. This was mostly at our secondary level. We did use some of the choice boards at our primary as well. But because of the way that we structured our secondary schedule, we really had more asynchronous time for them. So we wanted to give the students more student choice, so they can really show their mastery of the power standards that we were going through. Students only submitted work that teacher would provide feedback on. So something that we learned from our teachers were that they were assigning a lot of things last spring in our remote learning 1.0, and they felt very pressured to grade everything and go through, give it a number or provide feedback, and it's unsustainable. So while we focused on if they were going to turn something in, we really want them to turn in something that's going to be of value. So what kind of feedback can you give the students on an assignment? If it's something they can just check their answers on, post the answer key, have the kids check it on their own time, and come back with questions about why they got something wrong or not. But anything that they turned in was really something that you were going to give effort into providing feedback to record their mastery or help them reach mastery. Provide text resource sites for parents and students. I'm sure every district has done this in some way or another. We really tried to create what we call a tech corral, because our mascot is a Mustang, where our parents and students can go to get some quick hit videos. It's where our troubleshooting website was for our tech team, where they can do a trouble ticket or Google Meet or a chat box type deal to help reach our students and parents where they were when they were remote. And it did allow us to push a more small scale PBL integration. We've been through a couple cohorts of PBL works, have had some good buy-in from our teachers, and we didn't want that to go away in this kind of environment. And by focusing on mastery learning and going through power standards and formative feedback and all those things that go along with that kind of environment, it really did bring back up the conversations of PBL and how do we show mastery in different ways, and also through cross curriculum, allowing some of our middle school teachers who are already in teams to begin with to kind of work together in new ways. So that's how we addressed our three biggest failures were from remote learning 1.0 to make our remote learning 2.0. So with this, for our remote learning 2.0 for our primary, we really wanted to replicate the typical school day as much as possible for routine purposes. Based off of our community responses, this was something that they really wanted. They wanted the scheduling for their students. It would be helpful. And this is for those students that would regularly attend our school. We did have what we called our solo, our online learning opportunity, which was more of an asynchronous environment completely. But for those who wanted a little bit more teacher interaction, a more synchronous day, we kind of created that. We had constant check-ins and support opportunities throughout the day. We were synchronous for the most part, Monday through Thursday. And then on Friday, we created our asynchronous learning days that were focused on student-centered activities to show mastery. And I'm just going to click on here real quick to kind of show you a schedule of some of our students. So within our 5 buildings, this is pretty close to what we all did. So you can see for our day starting at 9, we had some 30-minute blocks where everybody started the day off in like their homeroom, where the teachers did some type of SEL activity with them to start the day. Could be asking them how your day was going or what are you looking forward to. It could be, you know, one big thing in our elementary schools we're talking about at the beginning of the school year was what's filling your bucket, what's emptying your bucket. And a lot of our teachers talked about that every day about when we come in and their bucket is their emotional mind state. You know, how can we fill that bucket up throughout the day so when you leave, you know, it's not empty the next day when you come back. But then on here, the little asterisk blocks are our learning blocks. So each asterisk represents, you know, our ELA math or our rotating of our science and social studies classes. So in those half-an-hour blocks, we really started with about 20 minutes of, sorry, they're hour blocks, about 20 minutes of instruction to begin with. Typically, a lot of our teachers used Pear Deck to also add some formative assessments during that 20 minutes. Then they had the students kind of log off and do some activities or do some activities on their own while still logged into the Google Meet. And then about the last 10 minutes of class, everybody had to get back on, and then they kind of wrapped up the class. So there was kind of building that relationship and going back and forth for them. We were able to build in our encores with this, and they rotated on a weekly basis. So like one week we had art every day, and the next week we had, you know, online gym or music. So we were allowed to get a pretty good rhythm throughout this. And we were in this schedule with our elementary kids for about 5 weeks before we decided, due to the changes in our COVID ratings within our state, we ended up bringing our kids back pre-K through 5 every day, Monday through Friday. And what's very interesting is when we came back in person, these SEL checks, these lesson wrap-ups, which were not as prevalent in the past, became the norm. And they're still used now, you know, another about 4 or 5 weeks later, our teachers are still doing the daily SEL check-ins. We're starting lessons and then we're recapping lessons at the end. We're not just moving on. So some good pedagogy happening there for our teachers. And then our staff days on Fridays, when kids were doing asynchronous learning, we had, you know, district level meetings, as I mentioned, office hours, times to collaborate with their peers or to get some additional feedback time in, both in the morning and in the afternoon. So at our secondary level, we went to more of a block scheduling to help increase our instructional time for our content areas. We still had our daily homeroom check-ins like our primary, but they generally just weren't with your first period teacher or second period teacher. They were with your team, and our team structure is kind of based off of the content areas. We did a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous learning environments because they were, you know, alternating days because of the block scheduling. But once again, like the elementary schools, our asynchronous days really focus on student-centered activities. I'm sorry, excuse me, to show mastery. So the day they were supposed to be with the teacher, they're supposed to be with the teacher, engaging with the teacher, getting their experience, initial experience, and then growing that into where they felt kind of confident with it. And then their asynchronous day was the day they followed up and did the, you know, or when they were offline, they did the mastery of it and followed through that way. So for our secondary schedule, you can see here that we had our A and B schedule, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday kind of deal with our planning time. And what we were actually able to determine from our remote learning almost none of our middle school and high school students started at the normal building time. So what we ended up doing by moving to a block schedule allowed us to do some teacher team planning in the morning and then move the start of the hours back a little bit. And it really helped get the students there on time, and had great participation at 8:30 compared to 7:30. So, but from there we went through our typical periods with our synchronous parts and our asynchronous parts. So they were, hour-long blocks, similar to our primary where we had 20 minutes to begin the class. Kind of, you can stay online and do your work or get off and do your work, but then come back at the end and kind of we do our check-in and our wrap-up. And their Friday schedules were pretty much the same. They had grade level meetings or small group instructions, and then office hours throughout the day. So originally I was doing this for a half hour, and I know I'm a little bit over, but I am more than willing to answer any questions that you have. But before I open that up, I just wanted to let you guys know that from our Remote Learning 2.0, we actually saw a huge spike in our attendance, not only from our Remote Learning 1.0, which our attendance was considered to be an issue. We actually had higher daily participation rates during our Remote Learning 2.0 than we have when we're in person. The participation and the level of participation went up with almost every teacher stated that, and our mastery, our proficiency on our power standards. Our teachers had better records and believed that we were showing better mastery of those topics. So once again, we're from Strongsville. We're just a suburb of Cleveland. If you have any questions, my email is there. You can feel free to, email me, or if you have questions now, I'm more than willing to answer a couple.
Okay, so I'm watching for questions. Everybody raise your hand. You have a little hand symbol in there, so you can raise your hand, make comments, ask Dave some questions for what he's just shown us, which is really pretty amazing. I think my one comment that I want to make, Dave, is that, in the early parts, year 1.0 versus 2.0, I think probably what your schools and a lot of schools in America were really dealing with was the fact that, a deadly virus coming in and causing everybody to go, be shut down had an emotional toll of unprecedented proportion. People just sort of had to check out. And I think that had a huge part in everything. And it's still not over. We're still having a moment. Maybe it will never end, but definitely that was big. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that is true for us too, and it was really quick because in our state, I think a statement went out like March 12th that that was a Thursday, and then the following Monday or the following Tuesday, schools are supposed to be closed. So what we actually decided to do was, well, if you're telling us today that we're going to be closed next Tuesday, we actually end up closing the next day. And then we used that time to try to like front load as much as we could with our teachers. And then we had a design implementation to get our hardware out because only our high school took devices back and forth from school. So, my team and I had to devise a way to, have families opt in to needing a device, and then we had to have Chromebook distributions. So if you take away the 1,900 Chromebooks that our high school students already have of our 5,600 students, we had almost, I think we were close to 70 to 80% of our students in Remote Learning 1.0 requested a district device to be taken home. So we had to come up within a week of how to get that stuff out to our students and to our families. And I think one of the concerns was how are they going to participate when they got their devices. That took away some of the stress for our families and our students because they were familiar with their Chromebooks. It was a piece of school that they got to take home. Because we didn't know when we were going to go back, so we didn't really some of our students didn't take much stuff home. We didn't actually have locker clean out till like May. So there were some students who had left like lunches in their lockers from middle of March till May, and it wasn't a pleasant sight. Um, but that's the kind of things that, that it does take that emotional toll. Um, but when we came out with remote learning 2.0 in the summer, after all of our work groups and everything that we went through in our organization, um, it was a big success. Our community really enjoyed remote learning 2.0. We actually had a outcry that we were going in back to in person um, initially because of how successful remote learning 2.0 was going at all of our levels. Um, but of course, once we got in the buildings, our parents and students are more appreciative of being back in the building because it's bringing back some more normalcy, back from previous COVID. But um, but yeah, just we were just trying to, provide an experience that kind of reminded the kids of where they were last year as much as possible, and helping them get back to a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. I'm really proud of you. And I'm concerned, I think you should be an Edu Jedi now, Dave. Dave, you're going to get dubbed an Edu Jedi. You're going to be sent your plastic lightsaber, just so you know. Dave, I think, I'm going to be watching for questions coming in from other people. I think almost everyone on the call is unmuted. If you're not unmuted and you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, now's the time. Um, I don't like to be the kind of moderator that calls on you and sticks you on the spot, but I will if I have to. Some of you might not be unmuted, but if you want to be unmuted, please, let me know. I'd like to have, more people engaged in this. But Dave, I think what's actually happening here is you sort of mapped out a way to level up. Do you feel like your teachers are tracking along with all that? I mean, how would you characterize all your teaching level? I mean, is it pretty, normalized now, or what's happening on the teaching level?
When we were in remote 2.0, we actually delayed the start of our school year by a little over a week. And then we brought our teachers in, and we had a pretty strong week of PD on some of these new tools, and working with their grade level teams, and the power standards, and coming up with like what works good for them or at their classroom, and that collaboration part, which we try to do. We have 5 elementaries, and they're all K through 5. So collaboration has been hard to come by at times for grade levels in our primary. So this was a great way to kind of push them along, and then you have some of your teachers who are good power users, or just really were really good with one tool to kind of take the lead on, like, this is how I've taught this standard and it's worked really well. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to say that we kind of standardized it, but then you saw a majority of our teachers doing that one thing that one way with their own little twist to it. And then it really helped bring some things together and create a nice student experience. Um, the hardest part, I would say, would be the tech, on our part. Um, Teaching students or teachers to go into a live environment, at both our primary and secondary level. Our teachers, any teacher tends to be slightly perfectionist. So opening themselves up to where they're going to have a webcam focusing on them. They're going to be sharing their screen in a Google Meet, and that screen could have a Pear Deck, or it could be, just regular presentation, or even we have some Epson projectors that allow us to have our interactive part recorded on our computer screen as well. So it'd be a very clean picture for our students. Getting that tech up and going with the teachers uh, was pretty rough, and we're still experiencing growing pains with that, as some teachers still are struggling to utilize those tools in our hybrid experience, which is for our middle school and high school, or even our everyday experience in our primary. So we're still growing with it. We're getting better. Um, and I think that, but what it has done is really pushed us forward. I know that's been repeated multiple times today, and in other things I've been talking to people about. It did push us forward. And as we've been back, we've been able to try to keep that momentum at least where we're at, if not moving forward. Um, and by having some of the great administrators we have in our district, they've been able to help our teachers not slide back into their normal routines, going back the way they were back in February or January of last year. Pulling out that binder of worksheets they've used for the last 10, 15 years. Redesigning things. But the biggest thing now is, I would say, is continually updating and increasing the tech skills of our teachers and really time. Based on those schedules, and now that we're back, hybrid for our secondary and soon to be full in person for everyone, K through 12, the time that they were able to provide our staff to reach these levels are going to go down a little bit. And that's something that we're trying to address in other PD or some unorthodox time release moves within our district.
That's awesome. Now, were you able to be a little bit part of the last session on hybrid logistics where we talked about, shifting time and space and moving towards full personalization? Were you on by then?
Yes, I was watching and listening while I was eating my lunch.
Oh,
Um,
good. Well, the
so
reason I'm asking is because, there's a lot of opinions about where this is going to all go. And just watching the consumer markets and the huge uptick in purchase of professional grade stuff by parents, we don't think normal is coming back normal. And the shift to really full personalization is imminent. So do you feel like you guys are going to continue mutating, or are you going to try to go back to normal?
yeah, from my position, and our superintendent has echoed this, and our school board has too, is from this experience, school can never be the same. This summer when we started, we had our remote learning 2.0, and then we had our solo, which is our online learning schools. So our K through 5 had one type of a learning platform that we purchased, and then our 6 through 12 had another. But as we all know, with those platforms, you miss some electives. You miss your band, your orchestra. You miss some of your honors levels or your AP classes. Um, so it wasn't soon after we came back in person, um, we actually created a Solo 2.0, which allowed our students who were partaking in remote learning 2.0 in these advanced or honors classes or these electives to continue on from home in a safer environment. It also allows us to have our students be anywhere, even for our current learning in building or with solo. Um, you know, we're requiring our classrooms to be 5 feet apart for student desk. We've done the best we can of limiting classroom sizes, but with scheduling, it's not really possible with some of our limitations. So what I would believe what we used to call satellite rooms, um, or like distance learning labs, we have a gym in our high school that we're calling our supplemental student learning environment. It's a place where the kids there's more than 25 kids or whatever the number is for that classroom, and we're at a desk on a rotating pattern. Those students are going to a remote location inside the building and participating in a distance learning experience. We're training teachers just this Friday on the different levels of those kind of remote experiences, to your traditional distance learning all the way up to a true high flex experience. Um, and so our thinking process is, if this works in this kind of environment, come next year, come spring, whatever it is, where the students need to be on campus. So we've already developed some type of a open campus for some of our solo 2.0 kids to come in person for some of their honors classes if they don't want to do it from home. So it really is going to have a bigger scope long term of kind of reaching all of our students, and maybe even changing some of our scheduling practices at our secondary levels, and even bringing upon maybe some different courses, because there might be more availability in time if we go to like a 3-day-a-week course online and then maybe a 2-day-a-week course online. So with a different time frame.
Yeah, so you're experiencing and starting to think through the alteration of the use of space and time, and then how that involves the teacher, which is, we're in a mutation pattern, and you're kind of living through that.
Yeah, and what's nice is we do have a staff that really, a good portion of our staff really likes to innovate. We have a community that really supports us, and anything that we can provide a justification for in supporting the best environment possible for our students, they generally go full in with us. So even if it's something that may be a little more experimental, we tend to have very strong support from within and without of our buildings.
That's awesome. So I'm watching for any other questions coming in here, but any other comments you want to make, Dave, just really about your journey and what you personally went through? I mean, you had to step up big time. Like,
Yeah.
all of a sudden you were like the point man for everything probably.
Yeah, so last year was my first year in this position. Before that, I was like 12, 13 years in the classroom as a teacher, and I jumped right into this director position of instructional technology, which is basically at our district, if it plugs in, my team's in charge of it. So we went from really going like, Dave, how are we going to get this started, to how are we going to survive it? And then really working with our central office team and our building team, our admin teams, on organizing work groups with parents and teachers, and even some of them had students, for some insights of how can we address those failures, to really help us move forward. And that's the thing that we've been really focusing on, and hoping that, holding our heads up, that we've been able to weather a lot of the issues, and come out on top and better from them. Just watching TV and coaching previous sports, everybody says there's winner or losers in situations, but from my coaching experience, there's winners and there's those who learn from those experiences to maybe win next time.
Very good attitude. I'm hoping that a lot more people out there have that attitude. I have got some attitudes that aren't that good.
And at times, we all go through those ups and downs. If it wasn't for my wife and my kids being very supportive of those long days, when we all were remote, a lot of us in my central office, our curriculum director and superintendent and myself, we were working 10, 12, 14-hour days for 2-3 months straight.
Yeah.
Very unsustainable, but it's what we had to do to get through at the time. Remote learning was still probably close to 10 to 12-hour days in the beginning. But as we gotten used to it, things become more normalized. People started learning the technology. We had the buy-in. It brings us back to your normal director hours, and the more of the work-life balance.
Yeah, because that has to return, because otherwise people start to get broken. I mean, we got broken people on the battlefield everywhere.
Yeah.
And did you guys experience any retirements? Like people just decided, that's it, I'm out?
Yes, because we were coming back. We had a significant amount. Well, I'd say we didn't have a significant amount of retirements initially, or right now. We do have a lot out on leave, to make those decisions. And then we have some that we are able to, because of our remote learning, our solo learning opportunities for our online students. We do have some of our teachers who physically can't be in buildings, helping teach those students who can't be in buildings themselves.
Well, yeah, maybe they have health concern and all that. Yeah, I get that. And that's going to probably continue for a while. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for being, a presenter with us today and sharing your wins and what your evolution was like. Just the going through it all. I'm super proud of you. It was great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me and allowing me this opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, great.
The award-winning Hapara Student Dashboard, a one-stop hub for assignments, announcements, and resources. Learners today have a lot of useful apps and technology at their disposal designed to help them achieve educational goals and enjoy learning. but there is such a thing as too much technology, and learners can become overwhelmed. Student Dashboard adds to the functionality of all these apps, Google Classroom and G Suite, and puts them in one central hub that creates a manageable workflow for learners. It reduces stress for learners and helps them to build their organization skills so they can stay on top of things in school and later in life. Student Dashboard does this by providing a student-friendly interface that displays important due dates and upcoming assignments, which learners can access with just one click. It also gives them quick access to their Drive files and Gmails from their teachers. With Student Dashboard, learners no longer have to search around their drives for a file, scour Google Classroom for an assignment, or scroll through endless notifications in their inbox to find an important email from their teacher. It's all in one convenient, easy-to-use spot. Student Dashboard is a simple, mobile-friendly space designed with feedback from learners to keep track of their digital learning whether they are at home or in the classroom.